We'll just get started. We'll just get started right now and right away and jump into it. My name is Helen from AMB, and please feel free to use the chat function as questions will be saved for the end in the last 10 minutes. On behalf of TIES and AMB, I welcome you to the second workshop of 4 that we are providing to our attendees for a happier and healthier living through mindful practice. I'll get started to introduce our wonderful facilitator today. This afternoon's workshop will be hosted by Tom Heah. Tom is an occupational therapist and has worked in the mental health and substance use field for almost 20 years now. He is certified in MBCT and MBSR and is a mentor for mindfulness teacher trainees at the UCLA Mindful Awareness Research Center and at the Center for Mindfulness Studies. He has facilitated mindfulness courses at the Vancouver Coastal Mental Health and Substance Use Program, nonprofit organizations, colleges, and privately since 2006. Tom is passionate about his work in mindfulness and strongly believes in individuals' abilities to find wisdom, strength, and healing through mindfulness-based practices. Without further ado, I present to you Mr. Tom Heah.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to see you all here, or well, at least see the participant names anyway. I'd like to just start by thanking the organizers, particularly Helen, Drew, and Irene Ma from Alberta Mind Biotech, and the Immigration and Education Society and the Alberta Ministry of Health for sponsoring this conference. And most of all, I would like to thank all of you showing up here today. I'd like to acknowledge that I live and work and play on the unceded Salish lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, where Vancouver is now situated in British Columbia. And I'd like to invite you as we start this workshop to kind of reflect on the land and ground that you are in. And we will start with a short meditation just to connect us with the here and now. And I just invite you to come to a comfortable posture, either in your chair or if you're standing, coming to a comfortable standing posture. And you can do this short meditation with your eyes open or closed. And perhaps just taking a moment to just feel the earth supporting our bodies, sitting or standing here, connecting with a chair, connecting with the ground beneath, and sensing that connection. Feeling the entire body, sensations in the body, perhaps sensations on the surface of the skin, and perhaps further deeper into the body, and welcoming whatever sensations are present. Checking in a little bit with how the mind is right now. What thoughts are present? What am I bringing to this presentation? And then allowing those thoughts to be there because they're here anyway. Perhaps noticing how our bodies are feeling right now. What emotions are present? And now taking a few moments to bring our attention to the sensations of breathing. Wherever your breath is vivid for you, you might notice the sensations of the breath at your nostrils or at your chest or the belly. You might feel the air coming in and out of the nostrils, maybe feeling a slight tickling there. You might feel temperature changes or not of the air coming in and out of the nose. And we can connect to the present moment with the sensations of breathing at the nostrils. You might also feel the sensations of breathing at your chest as it rises and falls with each in and out breath. Or you might feel the sensations of breathing at the belly expanding and contracting with each in and out breath. And now over the next couple of breaths, we can just expand our awareness. Notice we can expand the awareness around the breath sensations to the entire body, standing or sitting here, or perhaps some of us might be lying down on the sofa or the bed. We can just feel our body now, the sensations in our body, sensations of the breath. And then taking a few moments now to connect with what your intention for attending this workshop on MBCT and working with strong emotions is. And that may be clear or not clear. Just noticing what my intention, what my motivation, what brings me here today. And then when you're ready, if your eyes were open, widening your gaze, and if your eyes were closed, opening your eyes. So thank you everyone for joining me in this short meditation, which has a name. It's called the 3-minute breathing space, and it's one of the practices that we recommend during the mindfulness-based cognitive therapy courses that we teach. And really it's starting by just gathering our attention, noticing what is present right now in our bodies and in our minds and in our hearts. And then focusing the attention on the breath wherever you can feel it strongly or vividly, and then expanding the attention to the entire body. So today, the agenda is really just talking a little bit about mindfulness. I'm sure you've heard about mindfulness from the previous workshops or in the news. It's become quite a popular term in our society, in many societies. And I'll talk a little bit about what MBCT is, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. And we'll dive into some practices for managing strong emotions from the MBCT course, as well as some other practices from the field of mindfulness. I'll talk a little bit about the evidence for the effectiveness of MBCT as well. I like to make this somewhat interactive. It's a bit challenging, but with such a large audience. But if anyone has any questions or would like to raise their hand to ask anything at all, please let me know. And I think one of the panelists will allow you to do that. I'm just reading a message from one of the organizers, how I can do that. Okay, thanks, Helen. So mindfulness has Eastern roots. It's from a word called sati, which in the Pali language of Buddhism comes from the Eastern Asian area about 2,500 years ago. And it literally means to remember, but not in terms of memory, although some scholars think that that's part of it as well, but it's to remember where we are, remember to be aware. And one of the more widely used definitions of mindfulness in the West, at least, and in the secular mindfulness field, is the awareness that arises when you pay attention with intention and without judgment. And of course, as we even listen to those words without judgment, we think, how can we do that? And part of mindfulness is really to be aware of whatever is around, including judgment. And so we're not excluding anything from mindfulness, we're actually including whatever is around, both inside and outside. So Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese peace activist and Buddhist monk, says that mindfulness is the energy generated when we bring the mind back to the body and are in touch with what is both inside and outside of us. And mindfulness is not about emptying the mind or generating a particular state. It's not about positive thinking, changing our thoughts, but really changing our relationship to our thoughts and emotions. And it's definitely not a substitute for systemic changes. So if we are in an unjust social or situation, then it's not a substitute for skillful action. But it is one step, one tool that one can use to manage our challenging thoughts, to manage our challenging emotions, and to give us a little bit more of a discerning view of what skillful action one might take. So, as I alluded to earlier, mindfulness is quite common in society, and in this slide, you can see that from 1980, when one of the first kind of secular adaptations of mindfulness to medicine was done through what is called the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, was started in 1979 by someone named John Kabat-Zinn at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center. And what we're interested in today is the mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, which had its first sort of trial in the year 2000, and it was found to be a fairly effective treatment approach for preventing relapse due to depression. Here, just for reference, I put down a couple of programs that my colleagues and I have started back in 2006, introducing some mindfulness-based cognitive therapy and mindfulness-based stress reduction program at our mental health center in Vancouver, and then a partnership in 2016 with the GF Strong Rehab Center in Vancouver. So you can see that since the inception of the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, where there was very little research, there's now quite an exponential growth of interest and research publications. Just noting the number of publications in Amazon alone perhaps gives us some reason to pause. So mindfulness is a way to balance what I call the doing mode of mind, what is referred to doing mode, which is a really important mode of mind, which helps us to build buildings, which helps us to come to a conference like this, manage our technology. It helps us to think and to produce and to narrate our experience. And mindfulness is a way to balance the doing mode from the being mode, and the being mode, which is really the experience of the present moment and being intuiting, having presence and sensing into the present moment. So now I'd like to just invite you to, if you are comfortable, either lowering your gaze and having a soft and unfocused gaze, or closing your eyes. And then I'm going to read to you a few sentences and just checking in with what comes to mind. John was on his way to school. What arises for you? What do you think when I say that sentence? John was worried about the math class. He was not sure he could control the class again today. It was not part of a janitor's duty. So, just wondering what you thought as I read each sentence. John was on his way to school. Perhaps you might have had some image of John as a student, as he was worried about his math class. Perhaps you were thinking that John was going to take a math test. And then there was a switch. He was not sure he could control the class today. Perhaps you thought he was a teacher. And then I sort of tricked you by saying it was not part of a janitor's duty. And so we're constantly kind of thinking, narrating, going into the future and predicting. And that's part of what's called the doing mode. The being mode would have been John was on his way to school as just a series of words that you received through your ears. He was worried about the math class. He might have had some empathy for his worry, and so this really demonstrates the difference between what I call the being mode, just being present with what's arising, a bunch of statements and sounds, and the narrating and thinking. And we need both in our lives, and mindfulness is a way to balance these two modes of thinking. And so the first tip I would offer, if we're trying to manage our emotions, is really to check in with ourselves. Where is my attention right now? Is it in the doing mode of mind, or in what we call the experiential or being mode? And so, what are emotions? Well, it turns out that there's very little agreement among even the scientists about what emotions actually are. But I'll use the definition that the developers of the mindfulness-based cognitive therapy came up with, and that is emotions being a package of thoughts, feelings, body sensations, urges, and behaviors. So, and with mindfulness, we can bring awareness to our emotions, bring awareness to the thoughts that are associated with them, and any associated urges or behaviors that come along with an emotion. So the second tip would be to just check in what emotion is arising right now. What am I aware of right now? Is it sadness? Is it joy? Is it a sense of ease, or is it frustration? So part of working with strong emotions is naming what that emotion is. There's a saying in psychology, naming it to tame it. So I'd like to just spend a little bit of time just talking about the origins of MBCT, or mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. And it comes from a course known as the Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction Program, or MBSR, that was started in 1979, where students are engaged in a series of mindfulness and awareness practices to become aware of our habitual ways of thinking, doing, and also becoming aware of our body sensations, because our bodies are a place where emotions are stored or expressed. And through awareness, it allows for a different kind of response. And MBCT arose from the MBSR program in about 1990, and it's really a way that helps students who take the course to recognize patterns of ruminative thinking and to catch it before the ruminative and negative thinking develops into a relapse due to depression. So MBCT is a combination of meditation or mindfulness practices and cognitive behavioral principles. And it's been shown by the research, and I'll go into the research in a little bit more detail later, that it's equivalent to sort of the standard treatment for relapse due to depression, which is antidepressant medication. And it turns out is equivalent to another gold standard treatment for depression, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. And the mindfulness-based cognitive therapy program has been adapted. It was originally developed for preventing the relapse due to depression, but since then has been adapted for working with anxiety, for working with people who have current depression, and working with people who have pain and substance use disorders. And it's trains students to bring awareness to automatic mind states to prevent relapse. And it comprises 8 weeks of training, plus a half a day of what we call a silent retreat, where we practice the mindfulness um, principles or mindfulness exercises in a day of silence. And those exercises are led by the teacher. It also includes home practices in between the classes. It includes different sorts of cognitive exercises and a whole host of different mindfulness practices, both in stillness and as well as in movement. And we'll have a chance to do some of those. And it's really a skills-based program. And this is a bit of a busy table, but comparing what MBCT or mindfulness-based cognitive therapy is compared to CBT. And really there are many similarities between MBCT and CBT. Those of increasing awareness to automatic thoughts and awareness of how aversion or aversive behaviors to our experiences can actually maintain the very behaviors that we're trying to manage. The difference between mindfulness-based approaches and cognitive behavioral therapeutic approaches is that in mindfulness, we're looking at thoughts simply as mental events or sensations in the mind. And in CBT, we're looking at thoughts as perhaps aspects of the self that we might want to modify. In CBT, we're addressing the content, and in mindfulness, we're looking at our relationship to our experience. In mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, there's a very large emphasis on how our thoughts and emotions and urges are expressed in the body, large emphasis on the senses, and perhaps a larger emphasis on cognitions and thinking in cognitive behavioral therapy. Just going to stop there for a second and ask if there are any questions that people want clarified or want to discuss any points that have been raised so far. Okay, so we'll go on. We're going to be doing some mindfulness practices soon. And before we do that, I'd just like to talk a little bit about something called the window of tolerance. And so during a typical day, we have experiences of calm and stresses and changing emotions. And most of the time, we are able to manage these experiences within what I refer to here as the window of tolerance, where we have an optimal amount of arousal in the body, and we can learn new things, new skills. Sometimes we can get kind of caught up in our thoughts and in our emotions and get feeling a sense of overwhelm, and we can get bumped out of our zone of smooth sailing up into what we call the fight or flight or hyper aroused zone, where we might feel really restless or anxious, or we might get racing thoughts. And in this zone, it's a little bit harder to learn. If we hang out a lot in this zone, in the fight and flight, we might get exhausted and crash right down into what we might call the hypoarousal zone, on the free zone, where we might feel numb or disconnected from our emotions, our body, and our feelings, and our thoughts. And so it's really important when we're beginning our meditation to just monitor whether we are in this kind of zone of smooth sailing or window of tolerance. And because during mindfulness meditation, as you'll see, or if you've done this practice before, you'll encounter different emotions and feelings. And at times these may feel quite activating. And so it's important that we stay within our window of tolerance. And these are some of the things that we can do if we feel that we're outside of our window, either in fight or flight or in freeze. We can open the eyes. If you close them, you can move around, you can shift posture, you can take a slow and deliberate breaths, making the out breath longer than the in breath. And my attention is drawn to the Q&A, and I will come to your question in a second, Hannah. And or you could drink some water, or you can shift your attention outside the body to some items in the room, and so on. Okay, so I'm just going to take a pause to answer a question. Is the change expected in MBCT? I'm not quite sure what you meant by is what change expected in MBCT. Hannah, do you want to either ask the question or type it in? Oh, okay. How do I, yes, Hannah has raised her hand. Yes. Can you unmute yourself and speak, Hannah?
Oh, awesome. Now I'm unmuted. I wasn't sure how to unmute myself. Thank
Okay.
you.
No
So
worries.
I've typed the question when you were showing the previous slides with comparison with CBT and mindfulness based cognitive therapy, and uh you in the first difference you like, yeah, here, so you there is thoughts as mental events, or like you indicate that CBT is goal directed and there is a goal of change. So is do we expect any change when we practice MBCT? Like, or do we just expect acceptance, even though emotions might be quite distressing?
Mm-hmm. That's such a good question, Hannah. And
Thank
it's
you.
not a trivial one for sure. And emotions can be quite distressing and quite activating. And so part of the practice of mindfulness is really taking care of ourselves first and foremost. And the invitation is really to go only as far as is comfortable in that moment. And so if an emotion is quite strong and quite difficult, we perhaps can bring attention to the sensations of the emotions in the body, and then move the attention to somewhere else in the body or outside the body that is um, feeling at ease or calm, and then slowly coming back to the area of difficulty. And so when we talk about acceptance, we're not so much talking about accepting bad behavior or accepting that this will always be the same, but we're talking about accepting that in this moment, this emotion is here. And in the next moment, it may or may not be different, but in this moment, can I accept that it is here for now? So we're not trying to challenge it. We're not trying to question the emotion. We're using a kind and open-hearted awareness of the emotion in this present moment, and just noticing what happens to it. Does that kind of answer your question?
So basically, there is, well, direct way to combine both approaches, right?
Yes. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's right. We're combining both approaches. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. And we'll have a chance to practice what I just talked about in a few minutes. Thanks for your question. So the third tip is really to be aware of what is arising right now with a sense of allowance or kindness to whatever is arising right now without pushing it away and without hanging on to it. And from the research in working with strong emotions, what we resist actually persists. And in MBCT, with working with depression, it turns out that the aversion to some of the difficult sensations and the feelings that arise with relapse to depression or depression itself is what maintains it. So part of the invitation is really just to be aware of what is arising in the body right now and what thoughts are present. So now I'd like to invite us to do a mindfulness practice. Actually, I'm going to combine two practices together. And the first is a movement practice. So when we do mindfulness, we can practice mindfulness in sitting, in standing, in lying down, and in walking, and everything in between those four postures, which is really mindful movement. So in this kind of fifth posture of mindfulness, we move the body in certain ways, um, and then notice what happens to our attention as we do so. So I'd invite you either to sit up in your chair a little bit more straight, or if you would prefer to stand, you can stand. And this practice can also be done by visualizing the movements. So you don't actually need to physically move. In mindful movement, you can actually visualize the movements. So choosing to either sit or to stand or to visualize the movements, and you can move back and forth between standing and sitting and visualizing and sitting or standing. So just choosing one of these postures. I will demonstrate the movements standing. And for those, like I said, of you who would rather not do the movements physically, you can visualize them. And then just taking a few moments to check in with your body in whatever posture you're in right now. Feeling the sensations of the whole body, standing, sitting, or visualizing the body, sensing the body, feeling the sensations at the points of contact between the floor and the feet or the backs of the legs. And then taking a few moments now to bring the attention to the sensations of the breath. Just finding where the breath is vivid for you. And even as you move from whatever posture you were in to this other posture, what happened to any feelings or emotions that you had when you were in the old posture? Sometimes just moving our bodies can shift how the body feels. So now just becoming aware of the sensations of breathing. No need to control or manage the breath in any way. And on your next in-breath, raising the arms forward and up towards the ceiling, or visualizing the arms moving up and up towards the ceiling. Keeping the attention in the body. And then stretching out through the arms and fingers. Continuing to breathe, making sure that we're moving to our own limits. Breathing, stretching, noticing what's arising in terms of body sensations, thoughts, emotions. And then allowing the arms to float back down. And now what's happening? What are you aware of? Body sensations, thoughts, feelings in the body. Now keeping the left arm down and moving just the right arm up towards the ceiling. And then shifting the weight onto the right leg or shifting the weight onto the right bum. And then stretching out through the arms as if you're reaching for a set of fruit just out of reach. And it's okay with your neck looking past the outstretched fingers of the right hand or visualizing this movement. And breathing and stretching here. And now shifting the weight back to center and lowering the arm. And checking in. How is the body feeling? Noticing any difference in sensations between the right and left sides of the body. Now raising the left arm up towards the ceiling, shifting the weight onto the left leg, and then reaching out through the fingers of the left hand for another set of fruit just out of reach. Looking past those fingers, if it's okay with your neck, and breathing here. And what's happening with the breath, quickening or slowing down? What body sensations are you aware of right now? And now shifting the weight back to center and lowering the arm. Noticing what's arising in your body after having done this movement. Now we'll do some gentle shoulder shrugs. Start by raising the shoulders up towards the ears, drawing them together at the front, lowering the shoulders, drawing the shoulder blades together at the back, and then just doing a couple more of these movements in your own time. And then reversing directions. And then when you're ready, just coming to stillness. Noticing what's happening in your body right now. Raising the hands up towards the waist. We'll do some gentle twists. We'll start by just facing the hips forward and turning to look over the left shoulder. Making sure that we're not moving beyond our limits. Noticing what's arising in the body right now and how we're meeting these sensations or any thoughts arising. Turning to look back to center and then turning the other way, looking over the right shoulder, keeping the hips facing forward. Now back to center. And now twisting from the ankles up and looking over the left shoulder. Making sure we're not holding the breath at any time. Coming back to center and twisting and looking the other way over the right shoulder, twisting from the ankles up. And coming back to center, lowering the arms, and noticing what's arising right now. And if you've been standing, coming back to our chairs, we can also bring awareness to when we're moving from one posture to the next. And now in your chair, if you're seated or if you're standing, whatever posture you're in, we're going to move right into another meditation. And this is called a body scan meditation. And we'll do this just for about 5 or 6 minutes. After having moved the body, you might notice some stronger sensations in it. So if you're sitting or standing, just noticing what sensations are now arising in your body. There's no need to hang on to pleasant or push away unpleasant sensations. Just noticing what's arising, what sensations are here. And you can do this practice, this body scan exercise with your eyes open and a soft, unfocused gaze, or with your eyes closed. Now bringing awareness to the sensations of breathing without managing or changing the breath in any way, simply allowing the body to breathe on its own, just attending to the sensations of the breath. And now shifting your attention down the legs into the feet and lower legs, and taking a few moments to become aware of the sensations in the feet and the lower legs. And we're not trying to make anything happen. We're not trying to feel any particular sensations, but we're simply noticing what sensations are present here in the feet and the lower legs. And now from the lower legs, moving up into the knees and the upper legs, the thighs, the hamstrings, taking in the hips. Just feeling any and all or no sensations in the upper legs. It could be sensations of weight, of temperature, movement, or stillness. Perhaps there are areas of holding or tension. There might be areas of ease and softness. So with whatever is present, bringing a kind and gentle attention to those sensations in the upper legs. And if you notice that your attention has gone somewhere else, this is entirely natural. This is a part of having a mind that works well, is to think. So when the attention has gone away from the area of the body that you're focusing attention on, may have gone to thinking or to plans for the evening or memories of the past, then we can just notice that the attention is gone and gently bring it back, in this case to the sensations in the upper legs. And now letting go of the attention on the legs and moving the attention up into the belly and the chest area, and feeling whatever sensations are present to be felt here, including very subtle sensations, strong sensations, everything in between, and no sensations at all in the belly, the chest area. And now letting go of the tension here on the front of the torso and moving attention to the back, an area of the body that can sometimes hold a lot of tension and stress during the day. Feeling whatever sensations are there to be felt, and including none at all in the back. And now letting go of the tension here in the back and moving our attention into the hands and the arms, taking in the sensations in both hands and both arms. And as we attend to the body in this way with kindness and with curiosity, it's noticing how our minds relate to stronger sensations that arise in the body. Is it with kindness? Or is it with a sense of wanting it to go away or wanting it to be different than it is? And can we meet that with curiosity and kindness as well? And then now letting go of attention on the arms and hands and moving the attention up to the neck and the head, feeling the sensations there. The attention wanders, no problem. This is expected. This is entirely natural and almost actually to be hoped for. Just noticing where the attention has gone and then bringing it back to the area of the body that we're attending to, in this case, the neck and the head. And then from this area, the head and the neck area, just allowing your awareness to expand to take in the entire body in whatever posture you're in. Noticing sensations from the surface of the skin to deeper within the body. And perhaps also attending to the sensations of breathing. And then when you're ready, if your eyes were open, widening your gaze. If your eyes were closed, opening your eyes. And then just for a brief moment, bringing attention to the eyes. We can also attend to seeing the postage stamps. I'm not quite sure what you are seeing on your computer screen. And we can bring awareness to seeing. Perhaps sensing into this connection between participants and the panelists, and just noticing what's arising right now in the body. And so, thank you for joining me with this meditation, or the series of 2 meditations. And so what we were doing really is to bring awareness to when our body is moving and when our body is not moving. And perhaps during the meditation, you might have noticed different things. Some thoughts arising, some feelings, some maybe urges to stop the meditation or to continue the meditation. Some people might have different relationships to when the instructions came to an end. Maybe some of you wanted the meditation to last longer, and others feeling a sense of relief. So it's really interesting what arises when we do the meditation. And the invitation with mindfulness practice is really to become aware of what's going on. What is arising in this moment? What perhaps led to my feeling in this moment? What led to the thoughts? Is there some sort of context? Perhaps was I involved in an argument with a colleague at work today? And maybe that's setting the context for some of the thoughts and emotions and our behaviors in this moment. So mindfulness is really a way to pay attention to both our internal and external experiences with kindness. And by using the body and by using the sensations of the breath, we can find a different place to anchor our attention as we experience our life, as we experience emotions. And so the fourth tip I might offer is to notice actually what does this emotion feel like in the body? And attendant to that, what else is around? What thoughts? What urges? And so the body scan that we did a very brief version of previously is one way that we can kind of sense into our body and sense into what's going on in it. So I'm just going to stop and see if there are any questions, comments, points of clarification that people would like.
Hi, Tom. There's a Heah question for you. I'll just voice it out for you on the Zoom call. So this person says that they struggle with being too emotional sometimes. Can MBCT or mindfulness actually help them restrain or control those overpowering feelings?
Wow, that's such a great question. Thanks, Helen, and thanks to the person asking that question. So the practice of mindfulness is not to control our emotions or to necessarily change them. The invitation with mindfulness practice is really to become aware of them and also what causes them or the causes and what conditions under which they become overpowering. So with the MBCT course, if someone is feeling extremely depressed, we often suggest that they come back to the course when they're feeling less depressed. So there are times when perhaps attending to something might actually cause it to become worse, so to speak. And part of the invitation when we're caught in that cycle is to notice and become aware of what it is that's making it worse. And sometimes it is helpful to actually step away and to have to engage in mindful distraction, to take the attention away from the strong emotion, to place it on something else that's a bit more soothing and calming. And then when the body and mind is ready, to maybe come back and check out that emotion. So it's not a way to get rid of it, because one of the things that we know from research is that the more we try and get rid of something, the more tends to persist. I hope that kind of answers, or at least it points to a direction. There's a question from Alex. Hello, I'm a counselor with you. I'm writing to ask if you ever invite people to focus mindfulness on a negative thought to get distance from it. Thank you, Alex, for that question. So the intention, this is such a fine point. Yes, so in a few moments, I'll actually invite you to bring a somewhat challenging difficulty to mind. So not with not with the goal to get distance from it, but by bringing it to mind, noticing what actually arises. And often one does notice that we get a bit of distance. We become a little bit more decentered, we call it, from that thought. So it's not me, it's not mine, I'm not my sadness, I'm not my anxiety. But we're not approaching it with a goal of achieving that, although that might be an outcome, if that makes sense. All right, so if there are no other questions.
Hi, Tom. Sorry, another question from the Huva side. Is there a way, you had spoken about the window of tolerance, and this person's asking, is there a possible way to expand our window of tolerance?
Yes. Thank you that's such a good question. I was engaged in a conversation like this just yesterday with someone else, and the answer is, not the answer, there's no real answer, I suppose. But part of the intention of a practice like this is just to notice where our window limits are. And with practice, what I've found is that one can widen the window of tolerance. But if, like the previous person who was asking, if we're approaching something to get something out of it, then the opposite can occur. So if we're approaching it in order to widen our window of tolerance, the opposite might happen. But if we're approaching it with acceptance, with kindness, that this is where my window is right now, just that very act of allowing and acceptance can allow that window to widen just for a brief moment. If that makes sense. So in an obtuse way, I think yes, you can, but in a practice way, when we're in practice, we're not going into deliberately widen that window. Thanks for that question. That's a very important question. Hi, Tom. How can one know if mindfulness is right for them? The invitation is really to come to the practice with an open and skeptical mind, not a cynical mind, and not with the idea that this will change everything, but really to see, am I feeling different than I would if I wasn't doing this practice right now? So we don't know who mindfulness is suitable for and who mindfulness is not suitable for. In general, it's been shown to be a fairly safe practice, although there is some research that shows that, with very, very intense mindfulness practice, some adverse events may occur. But I would say that if someone is interested in mindfulness, to try small doses of it, just to see if this approach can be helpful. I know it doesn't answer your question, but we don't actually know if mindfulness is kind of right for them. And it depends what you mean by right for them as well. There is emerging research to show that mindfulness in combination with other techniques can be helpful for a range of conditions. And yeah, thank you. So I invite curiosity there. Okay, so if there are no further questions, I'd like to guide us or invite us into another practice. And like all the practices that I'm offering today, these are all optional. Please feel free to kind of refer to that window of tolerance diagram we talked about earlier. And if there are any practices or anything I say that is a little bit activating and you rather not be activated in that moment, disengage from the practice and come back to it if you wish. So we'll do this practice for about 6 or 7 minutes in whatever posture you're in, sitting, standing, or lying down or standing. And with the eyes either open or closed. And we'll start with an awareness of sound. So taking the attention to your ears now to receive sounds from in or outside your body, attending to the volume, to the pitch, the tone of sounds as they come and go, the sound of my voice, the sounds of silence between instructions. Noticing if what you hear is pleasant or unpleasant, or neither pleasant nor unpleasant. And if the attention goes away from hearing, just noticing where it went, maybe to thoughts or to feelings or to physical sensations, and then bringing the attention back to hearing. And with awareness of hearing, we're not so much thinking about the sounds or narrating. We're hearing, receiving sounds. Now letting go of sounds as our attention anchor and moving the attention to the part of the body where the breath is vivid for you. And if you rather not attend to the sensations of breathing, continuing to attend to the sensations of hearing. You can use the sound of my voice as the anchor, or you can use the entire landscape or soundscape as your anchor for hearing meditation. Or you can attend to the sensations of breathing at the nostrils or the breath, at the chest or at the belly. Just noticing where your attention is right now. Is it on sounds and hearing, or on the sensations of breathing? And if it's not on one of these two places, just noticing where the attention is. And it's entirely natural for the attention to not stay on an anchor as boring as the breath or as listening to sounds. There are lots of other things that catch our attention in the environment. And this is entirely natural, to be expected. And so each time we notice that the attention is gone, we can congratulate ourselves for being aware that it's gone to sounds other than what we're attending to, or to thinking, or maybe to emotions and feelings. And then we can gently bring the attention back to the sensations of sounds or to the sensations of breathing. No need to give ourselves a hard time. And if something other than sounds or breath catches your attention and is holding it, then there's no need to struggle to maintain your attention on the breath or sounds or hearing. Instead, just letting these go and then attending to this other thing. So if it's an emotion, attending to this emotion with kindness, feeling what this emotion feels like right now. Where in the body is this emotion felt? Maybe in the chest or in the shoulders, maybe in the neck or the belly, clenched jaw. Bringing kindness and curiosity to the emotions of this, the sensations of this emotion. Or perhaps it's a thought. Bringing awareness to thoughts as if they were kind of like clouds in the sky, coming and going. Some clouds are darker and more negative, and other clouds are more fluffy and more or less positive, more positive. So being curious about this other thing that brought our attention away from our anchor of the breath or sound. And then when this other thought, emotion, body sensation has diminished or released its hold on your attention, then bringing your attention back to the sensations of breathing or to hearing. So we're not struggling with the mind to keep it in one place. We're bringing awareness to whatever is arising. And now for the last minute or so, gathering our attention to either sounds and hearing or to the sensations of breathing wherever the breath is vivid. And then when you're ready, opening your eyes if they were closed and widening your gaze if they were open. So you might be noticing some sounds in my environment, and that's my dog snoring. So I'm just going to take a moment to, okay, he's quieting down now. So I just invite you, I don't know, Helen, is there a way for people to put down in the chat what they noticed? I'm just curious.
Yes, so all participants are free to write down in the chat
Okay. Oh, great. Okay.
at any time. So you can ask any questions and then hopefully our participants will respond.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Helen.
No problem.
So I just invite you to just type in just a couple of words what you noticed, what in that meditation that we did. Distractions and fatigue. Okay. What else did people notice? It was very pleasant. Irritability, sleepiness. So one person noticed a bunch of different things. Okay, relaxation and pleasant. Yeah, a few people have noticed different sensations and different emotions. Okay, yeah. Distracting thoughts. Yeah. Sense of emptiness. Thoughts are like clouds. Okay. Calmness and confidence. Impatience. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, so it's interesting how the same practice evokes um, different emotions, different feelings, from impatience to imagining or witnessing thoughts as clouds, calmness, confidence, sleepiness, irritability, relaxation. Some people found it pleasant. There's distraction and fatigue, intrusive thoughts coming in, passing like clouds. Okay. And once opening the eyes, met with a release of self-love. Okay. Their thoughts while hearing the dog sound. Okay. So noticing if that was unpleasant or unpleasant. Okay. Soothing. Okay. So a whole range of different body sensations and emotions and thoughts. Smile when hearing the dogs, pleasant sounds. Okay. Anyone when hearing the dogs, noticing that was unpleasant. And I won't take it personally, neither will the dog. Humorous, okay. Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. So that's a practice. Just noticing what does arise when we pay attention in this way, when we pay attention to um, sounds, when we pay attention to body sensations, the breath, and we can notice um, here in Wuba, breathing flow inside the body and relaxing in that rhythm. Okay, a few people have mentioned that it was relaxing, and others felt there was some restlessness and irritability. Okay. So these are a couple of practices that one can use when we're feeling a little bit um, like we need to touch base with the present moment. And we're using the body sensations as what we call anchors and sounds as anchors. We can also use thoughts as anchors. So the question earlier, do we ask participants to turn towards negative thoughts? And from the perspective of mindfulness, all experience are worthy of attention, sort of equal opportunity. So we don't reify thoughts. We don't put thoughts on a pedestal to be treated a little differently than anything else, but really to pay attention to thoughts just as we would the breath, just as we would sound, and just as we would strong sensations in the body, expressed as emotions, feelings, or body sensations, or urges to act in a certain way. So this is kind of what perhaps we might have noticed during the meditation. This is the same diagram as I showed earlier, but perhaps coming into a bit more clarity as we do these practices again. So some people notice some restless feelings, some thoughts like clouds, um, like that. Perhaps thoughts as clouds, emotions as clouds coming and going, and paying attention to also the calm or the absence of thoughts and emotions between these periods of weather. So part of the practice of mindfulness is actually being aware of the entire landscape, both of the ground, the space between the clouds, and what happens when we are actually aware of the clouds, like right in the midst of it. We actually also notice that actually they're kind of formless, right? So um, I'm having some technical difficulties here. Sorry. Okay. All right. So I'd like to now move on to one of the cognitive exercises in MBCT, and I'd invite you to do this with me if you want, if you wish. And you can either read the scenario on the screen or I can read it out. In fact, I'll just read it out. So if you'd like to close your eyes or lower your gaze. And you are walking down the street, and on the other side of the street coming towards you, you see someone you know. You smile and wave, and the person just doesn't seem to notice and walks by. What do you think? What body sensations and feelings do you notice? And what did you feel like, or what do you feel like doing? You are walking down the street, and on the other side of the street coming towards you, you see someone you know. You smile and wave, and the person doesn't seem to notice and walks by. What do you think? What body sensations are you aware of? What feelings? And what do you feel like doing? And here, I'd invite you to use the chat. Just, if you wish to, just to type in what you noticed, what thoughts came up, what body sensations, what feelings. Wow, that's very awkward, slight embarrassment. Okay. So the thought was, that's awkward. The emotion or feeling, slight embarrassment. There's some curiosity. The need to call out the person's name as loud as possible. So the urge, yeah, okay, there's a behavior there or an urge. There's a thought, they must be distracted. Okay, okay. And I ask you to consider whether the thoughts would be different if you were feeling good or if you were feeling bad. So if you yourself were in a bad mood, how would that change what you thought in that situation? And if you're feeling in a good mood, how would that change what you thought in that situation? And invite you to type that in the chat if you wish. Bad mood possibly heighten it. Okay. You're running earlier and you can always enter. If I were in good mood, I think I wouldn't be embarrassed and call them out again. Bad mood, pretend not to see them. Good mood, feeling of determination. Okay. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. Yeah. So, so the idea that our moods can affect what we think, and often what we notice is there's a situation, and then there's a feeling, but often we are perhaps unaware of what the thought is that gave rise to that feeling. That's another response, expecting what we might start the conversation, okay, in a good mood, in a bad mood, avoiding contact. Yeah, so depending on the mood we're in, we might have different thoughts and have different outcomes, different behaviors that we might want to do. And so it's interesting that often the first thing we notice is the feeling or emotion after we have a situation such as somebody perceiving that we perceive to have ignored us when we're walking down the street. And we completely miss the thought or the interpretation. And so part of the mindfulness practice is to bring awareness to our whole context. What is the situation? What else is happening? What is the feeling? And because we can see, that in this one exercise, everyone has a different interpretation, and that our interpretations and our thoughts can change with respect to how we feel. Perhaps we can loosen our grip around how much we believe our thoughts. And that is, in fact, one of the practices in MBCT, where we ask people to make a list of what their top 10 favorite hit thoughts are, and bring some humor to bear with even very negative or very kind of sticky thoughts. When we start to loosen our grip on how much we believe the thoughts, and we can start to become more aware of how they're affecting and our emotions. So, so tip number 5 is to become aware of what emotion is here, and then behind that emotion is there a thought, and even thoughts that say they aren't. Tip number 6, which I mentioned earlier, is to make a list of one's top 10 favorite hot thoughts, or hit list, like we would in iTunes. You know, we might line up 5 or 6 of our favorite tunes to play. And we can do the same with our hot thoughts, that perhaps negative thoughts that keep coming up over and over again. When we make a list of them, maybe on a sheet of paper, we can perhaps be a bit more objective. Getting back to the question that Anthony asked earlier, do we ask clients or students to approach our negative thoughts? And yeah, with curiosity and with kindness, we can slowly approach what thoughts are giving rise to our emotions. And so one of the things that mindfulness, MBCT, draws our attention to, and we had a chance to practice this already a little earlier, is noticing what how our body feels, whether it feels when we come into contact with any sort of event or emotion or thought or interaction with someone, what I label here as like a trigger, body sensation, emotion, thoughts. Our mind sort of filters it through our past experience, our perceptions, makes an interpretation. When we see someone walking down the street, we make an interpretation of that event. And then it's either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral in terms of the body sensation. And if it were just to stay at that level, it'd be lovely. But the problem is that we then become attached to whatever is pleasant. We want more of that. We become aversive or want to push away that which is unpleasant. Or perhaps we space out with something that's kind of neutral. So part of the practice, why we practice with the breath, is that it is a very, very neutral and boring anchor. And a few of you mentioned feeling sleepy, and perhaps some of you felt restless, and just noticing that arises. Because of the invitation here is really to just practice with how we are with these different, what we call feeling tones in the body, before they become thoughts, and before they become my thoughts and my emotion and my anxiety and my sadness. We can just become aware that sadness is here, and that there's a pleasant or unpleasant, usually a tone to it in the body. And can we just stay at the level of the feeling in the body with this sadness and the emotion of frustration, the feeling of anger, as opposed to I am an angry person, which is what happens when we become identified to those same thoughts and emotions. So tip number 7 is when we're feeling a strong emotion or having a bad day, having some, noticing some of our top 10 favorite hit list of thoughts, we can just check in, just stop, check in to see how the body feels right now. Is it pleasant? Does it feel uncomfortable? Or are we checking out? Are we feeling bored? In fact, right now, I'd invite you just in whatever posture you're in, just to check in, having a soft, unfocused gaze or closing your eyes, just noticing how your body feels like in this moment. Is there a pleasant and comfortable quality to what you're feeling? Is it uncomfortable and unpleasant? Or is it somewhere in between? And as you stay with the pleasant or unpleasant or neutral feeling in the body, what do you feel like doing? Is there an urge to act? And just coming back to the actual sensations of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. Okay. All right. So that's tip number 7, noticing the pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral qualities of our experience. And another thing that we practice becoming aware of is some of the nature of our experience. And we'll skip over this very quickly, is that all experience is impermanent, it comes and goes, that there is stress, life is stressful, and with awareness, we might become aware of our stress and become aware of what uh, keeps the stress in place. And there's a saying that pain plus resistance to pain gives rise to suffering. And so with mindfulness, we can become aware of the suffering, we can become aware of the pain, and we become aware of the conditions that continue to give rise to the suffering. And then the third thing that we are becoming aware of is what we talked about earlier, is that the experience of sadness is not personal. It is not my sadness. It is the emotion of sadness. And it's easy to say these things, but another thing to actually practice and to experience these 3 characteristics of experience or existence, that everything changes, nothing stays the same, that there is discomfort and stress in life, and that this is not mine, it's not personal. So the tip number 8 is, what am I resisting or holding on to in this moment? That emotions arise and they're almost like waves. We can't really stop them, but it's when we resist the waves that we create suffering for ourselves. So emotion plus resistance equals suffering. Okay. So I'd like to quickly just briefly review some of the evidence for mindfulness-based cognitive therapy that might address maybe some of the questions about is this an effective approach for me or my clients. So MBCT has been shown in some of the earlier and subsequent clinical trials to be as effective as maintenance antidepressants. And for people who have adverse reactions to medications, this might be a possible alternative. And MBCT has also been used in combination with antidepressants to prevent relapse due to depression. So in this trial, you can see that after 600 days. There's a 27 to 28% relapse rate among people who receive antidepressants and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, compared to a 71% relapse rate in those who received either a placebo, PLA here, or clinical management without either of these two therapies. And the best evidence for all mindfulness-based cognitive therapies and mindfulness-based stress reduction programs is that for pain and depression, the equivalent to what I call EBTs are evidence-based therapies. So these are accepted therapies in the literature for these conditions of depression and for pain management. So for preventing relapse due to depression, it's up to now, maintenance antidepressants has been sort of the gold standard. For people with current depression, cognitive behavioral therapy has been and continues to be the gold standard, but it's now appearing that MBCT is equivalent to those two evidence-based gold standard treatments. For smoking, it seems to be better than many of the evidence-based treatments out there. There's the American Lung Association Freedom from Smoking program that was compared with a mindfulness-based approach. And it seems that maybe the mindfulness approach is slightly more effective. For people who have schizophrenia, it's better than no treatment, but there haven't been as much studies of evidence-based treatments compared to MBCT for people who have schizophrenia. For anxiety, the evidence shows that it's about equivalent to CBT, perhaps a bit less effective than CBT, and those studies are ongoing. So yeah, so it's promising days. And in terms of those of you who are into statistics, the effect sizes of MBCT are about moderate. And that seems to be what we see in the literature for many of these evidence-based treatments, a moderate, not strong and not weak effect size. Any questions, comments? Ronnie, wow, huge impact. Yes, cautiously so. Yes, it's an interesting approach. This is a slightly older study by Britta Halsell and her colleagues that for the mindfulness-based stress reduction program. It seems like there's some changes in centers related to learning, self-referencing, attention, which makes sense. We're paying attention for 8 weeks and in between the classes, and a diminishment of the stress response, which of course is also related to depression. So tip number 10, our last tip of the day, of this session, is we'll end with a meditation. But before that, maybe I'll just pause for a second to see if there are any questions or comments about the evidence, the literature. I realize I went over that pretty quickly. All right, let's go into another practice if there are no other questions. The question is, your approach has been used with oncology patients. Can you speak to that? And are there any people that did not suitable for the mindfulness practice? Okay, I'll answer maybe Ronnie's question first. Yes, so there's a program called the mindfulness-based MBCR cancer relapse program at the Tom Baker Center in Calgary, it turns out, and also at the BC Cancer Agency here in Vancouver. And so Linda Carlson and Specca are two people that have done quite a bit of research in this area, and where they showed that an 8-week MBCR, or which is equivalent to the MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction program, can result in not reversals of the cancer, but it seems to increase the telomerase levels in breast cancer survivors. And there's some also research at the UCLA Mindful Awareness Research Center with a shorter 6-week MAPS with Mindful Awareness Practices program that seems to help with dealing with the sort of mood aspect of among cancer survivors. So this is a relatively new area that needs a lot more research, but what research has been done has been, somewhat quite promising, and reducing stress levels among participants. So the Tom Baker Center and the BC Cancer Agency are two places that I can refer you to. And Linda Carlson is one of the people. I'm not sure if she's still in Calgary, but she's done a lot of work on that. You're welcome. People that not suitable for mindfulness practices. I'll have to give you a bit of an obtuse. Okay, so two different approaches. There are lots of what we call exclusion criteria for some of the mindfulness-based stress reduction and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy groups. So from that perspective, there are some people who are excluded, and with experience of the facilitator, that exclusion criteria can be shrunk somewhat. So without going into too much detail, just because of the time, for example, people who have current depression are sometimes excluded from the mindfulness-based cognitive therapy group. It is recommended that you have been sort of are not in a current depression to attend the MBCT. But at our center, we have included people who have had or who are currently depressed. And that's a conversation we have with them and their physician to see if this is the right time for them. And so yes and no, there are there are exclusion criteria, but it depends on your center and that conversation with the client and with their clinician. Hard of hearing groups, yes, I do have a couple of my students actually who are deaf and who are mindfulness facilitators. And if you are interested, maybe email me and I can put you in touch with at least one of them who works in the States with, and she is deaf, and I'm sure would be happy to work with you. I have seen the way she delivers mindfulness programs, and it is an amazing thing to watch. Is all I can say. So yes, it has been and continues to be offered to people who are deaf, who struggle with. Could you suggest using mindfulness for people who struggle with dissociation? That's a really good question, and it's a big one. Hannah, thank you for that. It depends, and all my answers are couched with it depends. For some people who have dissociation, sometimes some of the grounding practices can be very helpful to help them find ground. So while it's not technically mindfulness, it is about using some aspect of the senses on which to place attention. So it can be actually a very helpful place to find ground, to come back to the body. Um, so cautiously, perhaps, and then I would also refer you to the window of tolerance if you are working with someone who's experiencing dissociation to, help just to monitor when they're feeling within that. So mindfulness is more awareness. Grounding is just a universal practice that can go across different disciplines. So mindfulness, you can be mindful of when you're grounding. So when you're grounding, you can actually bring a mindfulness to the act of grounding. You can also ground without, I suppose, without being mindful. But chances are, if you are intentionally grounding, you're bringing some element of mindfulness. Okay, thank you for the questions. Let's do a short meditation working with strong emotions, or continue to work with strong emotions. In the last one, we introduced the possibility of some challenging thoughts and emotions coming up during the meditation towards the end. And with this next meditation, which we'll do for 8 minutes, again, everything is completely optional. So coming to a comfortable posture and feeling the sensations of the feet against the floor, pressing down, if that's comfortable for you, or if you're seated on a chair, feeling the sensations of the backs of the legs pressing into the chair. And so here we're grounding. To Hannah's point earlier, we're grounding our bodies into the feet, into the ground, into the chair, and then bringing awareness to the sensations arising at those points of contact. And then allowing the eyes to have a soft and unfocused gaze, or closing them. And just checking in with your body, sitting or standing here right now. Noticing what's arising here. And perhaps you feel connected with your surface. Or perhaps you don't feel connected to the surface. What sensations are arising in this moment? And then taking a few moments to scan your body for areas of calm or ease or comfort. So we're now specifically looking for a part of the body that feels at ease or calm, or at least neutral or pleasant in its sort of sensations or feeling tones. For some of us, this might be in the soles of the feet. For others, it might be in the palms of the hands or the backs of the hands, or might be at our fingertips, or the tips of our toes, or even in the webs between our toes and the fingers. So somewhere in the body that feels calm or neutral in its feeling, or pleasant. And for some of us, this might exist outside the body. We can find perhaps a sound that we can focus on that's pleasant or neutral. And for some of us, this might entail opening our eyes and looking around our room to find something that we can, that anchor our attention on that's neutral, pleasant, or calm. So either body sensations through our ears or through our eyes. And now bringing to mind something that is just mildly irritating. Maybe an interaction with a colleague or family member or friend, or maybe someone cut you off in traffic as you were cycling down the road. It's bringing this situation, is not the most challenging situation in your life, something that is more like a 10-pound weight versus a 100-pound weight, something very, very minor, irritating. And as we bring this situation or this person interaction to mind, just noticing what emotion or feeling is arising in your body right now. Taking a moment to recognize what this emotion is. Perhaps a feeling of irritation is arising. A moment of anger is here. A moment of frustration, bewilderment, amazement is happening. And then just for this moment, allowing whatever emotion is arising to be here, because it's already here. We can't get rid of it. So the A in this practice of Wayne is to allow this emotion to be here because it's already here. And then the next step is to bring a kind and curious investigation of the sensations of this emotion in the body. Noticing where it's lying, noticing its parameters, the sensations, clenching of the jaw, tension in the neck or shoulders, tightness in the chest or belly or heaviness. And then bringing a sense of kindness, inviting this area just to be here, and we're just bringing some curiosity to the sensations in this area of the body associated with the emotion. And then the last step of this practice is the non-identification, not taking this emotion personally, by recognizing it, by allowing it, and by investigating. We've already achieved a measure of distance. We've become more of an observer than an owner of this emotion. Now letting go of this brief practice and escorting our attention back to the place of ease in the body, body sensations, or outside the body, the sounds, or to something that we see in the environment. And then when you're ready, opening your eyes if they were closed and widening your gaze if they were open. So that last practice that we did is, as you can see on your screen, is called RAIN. So the acronym for RAIN, recognizing whatever the emotion is here, allowing it to be here because it's already there. Investigating, not so much thinking about why the emotion is here, but really investigating it from the physicality of the emotion. What is the sensation? Where is it located? How big is it? How small? Is it changing, staying the same? And then when you've done the first three steps, we've already sort of disidentified or non-personalized that emotion. Okay, so I'm curious if people are comfortable just chatting, putting it in the chat what you experienced. Or if you have any questions in general. So that is the last practice of this workshop. And so if there are no, need more practice, yes. Here's some suggestions on if you want to start a mindfulness practice. And finally, some resources for continuing a practice if people are interested. So I'll open up the floor to any questions or comments, or if anyone wanted to chat about what they noticed in the last practice.
There's another question from Huva, Tom. So the person is asking just how has mindfulness impacted you in yourself or long-term in your life? Have you noticed anything?
Thank you for that question. Yes, the short answer, yes. How well? Some of the contemplative practices have been kind of a part of my life for many, many years. I was brought up in a Catholic Buddhist family, if you can believe it, coming from Malaysia, Singapore. There's a different influences. And when I was in my 40s, I kind of had a very stressful, anxious period. And my doctor recommended that I take a bunch of medications which didn't seem to work, after which they suggested a mindfulness-based stress reduction course. And then I noticed how much of my anxiety and stress was actually based on my ability or inability to be aware of what was happening to me. And so from a personal point of view, this was kind of my start to a more concerted mindfulness practice about 15, 16 years ago. And just noticing how it can help with depression, with anxiety, and some of noticing when those symptoms are first arising, and then taking some concrete steps to kind of manage those initial signs and symptoms. So from a personal point of view, it's been fairly very impactful, and it's something that I've tried to bring into my work as well. So thank you for that question. It's something that's very close and dear to me. So if I appear a little bit moved, that is the reason. Would you call imaginary exercises, for example, a calm and safe place exercise, a mindfulness practice? It's You can use visualization and imaginary practices, but I wouldn't necessarily call it mindfulness from a strict sort of definition point of view, Hannah. But certainly, like when we did the movement practice today, I asked those of you who wanted to visualize the movement to do so, but also to bring mindfulness, to bring awareness to the fact that visualizing is happening. So yeah, so possibly. And if we had more time, I would love to chat with you more about these imaginary practices to a calm and safe place practice. And I have thoughts about that as well. But yes, I personally separate those two because you can bring awareness and mindfulness to your thoughts, feelings, emotions, body sensations after you do a visualization or imaginary practice. That makes sense? So similar to the difference between mindfulness and grounding. So I tried to address that a little bit in the introduction to the last practice, where I invited us to bring awareness to whether or not we felt grounded to and connected to the chair or the floor. Thanks for
Okay. I think that is all of the questions. We've unfortunately run out of time, but we are all, of course, you'll be able to see Tom again tomorrow at the Mindfulness Conference. For now, though, on behalf of Alberta Mind Biotech, as well as TIES, we would like to thank Tom for his wonderful teachings and lessons of MBCT today. We can certainly take account of all these new practices, as well as using the RAIN method into account and utilizing them into our daily lives. This then concludes the 2 p.m. workshop on MBCT through strong emotions. For those interested, there will be 3 more workshop talks on Friday, June the 25th by Rosanna Diagnio and Suman Kanal, Ronnie Abraham, and Cesar Suva. Thank you again to Tom for his wonderful lesson, and thank you so much to everyone who attended today. We hope to see you tomorrow for the official conference at 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And for any more information regarding Alberta Mind Biotech, please head over to www.albertamind.com and TIES at www.immigrant-education.ca. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Alan.
That was all.